Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy us a podcast.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The world is going to hell in a handbasket. Oh my God, everybody. Did you know that white people think that they are discriminated against? Oh, yes. And it's not just a handful of white people. 55% of white people say that, generally speaking, they think there is discrimination against white people in America, although they haven't experienced it. They just think so. But, listen, I tell you, I don't know, how many, news outlets reported this, but this was an NPR Robert Woods Foundation survey, and they asked people of all different races whether or not they think that, white people are discriminated against in this country. And 55% of white people said, yes, but I've not personally experienced it. What do you think of that, Brett? What do you think of that? Somebody really needs to point them in the direction of the government. You know what I mean? Where you have all the white people you could ever want in control of everything.
Randy, I'm not going to say somebody wasn't discriminated against, whatever color. You say you got a story, you got a story.
All right.
But to be a white person and just assume that other white people are being discriminated against, that one's tough to swallow.
Well, here's the thing. White people like Tim Hirschman, who decided to put his name on this survey, they asked him, could we print your name? And he said, sure. They asked him, is there discrimination against? Absolutely. He didn't even wait for the end of the question. Is there discrimination against whites? He answered the question even before the reporter could finish the question. He's absolutely. He said it's been going on for decades, and it's getting worse for whites. It's getting worse for whites. And the crazy thing is, whites continue to be better off financially, educationally. We don't get, shot and killed as much by police officers, et cetera, et cetera. Another guy named Tim Music. He's white. He's 50 years old. He's a heavy equipment operator. He also agreed to have his name printed alongside this. He says, anti-white discrimination is real. He just never felt it personally. He said, I think you pretty much, because you're white, you're automatically thrown into that group as being a bigot and a racist. And somehow you perceive yourself as being more superior to everybody else, which is ridiculous. I'm just a man who happens to be born white. And then he tried to soften it a little, saying, I don't know what it feels like to be a black man walking around the streets, but I do know what it feels like to be pegged as a white man. What does that mean? All the power in this country is in white hands. Okay? It just is. How could white people be discriminated against when white people set up the system? White people constantly do the tax code, and the tax code is the actual vehicle through which all wealth is distributed, redistributed, et cetera, appropriations for various projects, states, infrastructure, healthcare, all that goes through the hands of, the predominantly white House and Senate. And, of course, we did have a African-American president who was also part white, for a while there, but of course he didn't have a Congress that would work with him. They just obstructed everything, saying, if we defeat him, it will be his Waterloo. Our goal is to make him a one-term president, said Mitch McConnell, and obstructed everything. In fact, Mitch McConnell held open a Supreme Court seat for a year to prevent the black man from nominating somebody. I mean, what is wrong with people? I don't even understand. But here's the telling thing about this little survey. Lower and moderate income white Americans are more likely to say that whites are discriminated against and to say they have felt it when applying for a job or a raise or a promotion or college admission processes. Now, this is why Donald Trump was so successful with his resentment, with his Blame America First message. This is why he was so successful and said things like, I love the undereducated voter. I love the non-college educated. I love them, because he was playing right into this white resentment. Now, I'll agree with you that there is a certain portion of this country that resents their lot in life. But the problem is not with blacks. The American dream is not a zero-sum game. It doesn't see people who are just flailing around trying to explain how all this happened, how they lived in a place that was so full of manufacturing jobs, and now it's the Rust Belt. Look no further than your freaking government, okay, people? Look no further than the Republican Party. You want to know who crashed the economy in 2008? I gotta say, Republicans. I gotta say, deregulation of the banks. Gotta say, lowering taxes in a time of war did not help you. In fact, it hurt you. And it killed your prospects for the next 10 years. And some have never recovered. And they understand in the Republican Party that they can do it to you and then claim shock that it's been done to you, point over there and say, blame him, blame the Latino, blame the black man. The American dream is not a zero-sum game. Blacks can win and whites can win all at the same time. That is the beauty of the American dream. What the Republican Party does is they upend your life. They take away your ability to pay for your house. They outsource your jobs. They don't raise the minimum wage. They don't even allow you, the ability to compete. They literally deregulate the banks so the banks can cheat you and then take away your right to sue them for cheating you. And then point over there to that small, shiny object and say, see that small, shiny object? And this is what Trump is doing, by the way, with Hillary and this Uranium One thing, which is also 10 years old, okay? It's a 7-8-year-old story. 2 people have been prosecuted for Uranium One. One was a Russian spy, and the other one was a trucker that, a truck owning company, not a truck driver, but a guy who owned a trucking company who was prosecuted for, taking bribes and fraud and the whole bit. I mean, other than that, like I said, Frank Gustra gave to the Clinton Foundation in 2007. In 2007, Hillary Clinton was not your Secretary of State. In 2007, Frank Gustra sold all shares in this company that you think is Uranium One, okay? It was a Canadian company. He sold all shares in it in 2007. Hillary Clinton was not your Secretary of State. She was your Secretary of State in 2010. She sent her Deputy Attorney General, whose job it is, Jose Fernandez, to represent her on this board called CFAS. And, bite me. And he recommended as one of the 9 cabinet members who sits on that particular committee, okay? It's 9 cabinet members that sit on this board, and all they do is recommend whether or not a foreign entity like this Canadian company could be sold to another foreign entity, in this case, the Rosatom, which is a Russian company. They recommended that there was no reason why this uranium company couldn't transfer from Canadian ownership, prior to that it was South African ownership, just so you know, to Russian ownership, because the uranium stays here. It doesn't go anywhere. It stays here. And we can control it because it stays here. We can oversee it. We can control it. We can regulate it. We can do whatever we want with it. And so they told the President of the United States, Barack Obama, to go ahead and approve it. And of course, the chairman of that committee, 9 cabinet members, is the Secretary of the Treasury, not the Secretary of State, who doesn't even attend these meetings. She has a deputy secretary who attends those meetings and makes the recommendation. She never once attended any of these meetings. However, I will say this, and so will every other person that I've spoken to. If they want to investigate this on Capitol Hill, let the chips fall where they may. Just don't spend my money on it, because I need my money to go to opioid abuse and addiction. You see. Did you see that yesterday? Okay, so the president made this ridiculous... These are the subjects for today, okay? You want to talk Uranium One? Then you're talking Fake News Friday, because that is fake news. That is fake Fox News. It is bogus. It didn't happen. It's absolutely insane that we're still talking about this all these years later. I got to show you what's going on Fox News. I mean, this is just an amazing thing. Let me play you Tucker Carlson. Okay, he had the ambassador, Nancy Soderberg, on his air, and she's trying to tell him what I just told you. She's trying to tell him the uranium stays here, Tucker. This is 7 years ago. It's been investigated 8 ways to Sunday. There was a prosecution. There were 2 prosecutions, actually. One person was kicked out of the United States because she was a Russian spy. She had nothing to do with the Uranium One deal, but they were looking into Russians in this country. The Obama administration was. They found a spy. They kicked her out. I mean, really, this makes no sense. And remember, the whole reason they're being so, oh my God, Russia, you know, it's Hillary, she's the one that colluded with the But the president of the United States currently knows that the intelligence community has told him Russia has attacked us. They waged cyber warfare on us during the last election. They are continuing to do it. We have to vote again in just about a year's time, right? It's almost November, a year's time. And the president says, why can't we get along? The JFK papers came out, some of them yesterday. See, didn't I say yesterday because Donald Trump said he was releasing all the documents, I didn't believe the documents were going to be released? I was right. I thought that was funny. No, they released a couple of them. They released 2,891 to be exact. And then the good ones, you know, the ones we want to see, they held them back. After 25 years and 10 months of being the president of the United States knew that this date, which was written in legislation, would come. And they were not prepared for it. Because he said he was going to release them. Won't this be interesting? And then on the day that they were to be released, he says, oh, I can't. Now, this is just like, can't we all get along with Russia? Well, it turns out that, you know, perhaps Russia killed Kennedy. That's number one. Number two, Russia moved nuclear missiles right off of our coast, and that's the Cuban Missile Crisis. Number three, Russia is still attacking us, okay? And the president says, you know, why shouldn't we get along with Russia? Because they attacked us. And now they're saying that Russia is a problem, but only when it's Hillary Clinton's problem. I don't get it.
So leaving aside the questions of the DOJ investigation, why in the world would Hillary Clinton's State Department and the Obama administration sign off on a deal that allows a rival power to control 20% of our uranium reserves? Okay, so now all of a sudden, Russia is a rival power. 5 minutes before this story was concocted by them and by The Hill, this guy named Solomon. Keep that name in mind because you'll hear Sebastian Gorka rail against this guy Solomon, or actually support this guy Solomon. But now all of a sudden, Russia's a rival. 5 minutes ago, they were saying, why don't we get along with Russia? Why couldn't we get along? This is just, I mean, my head is spinning from their lying.
Well, these business deals are ones that had review of 9 different agencies, and they agreed that since it was going to stay in the country, that it would be an acceptable
We've had no evidence
way to keep our uranium safe here and under appropriate controls. And I think that the reporter that it's been gone and yellow cake has been really disproven. And Tucker, I really think you're digging at the bottom of the barrel here.
May I stop you there? So you think it was a good idea for the Obama administration to give Russia, our primary adversary in the world, according to...
Oh, now they're our primary adversary in the world. And Obama gave Russia,
the Democrats, control of 20% of our uranium. Why would that be a good idea?
She just said it stays here in the United States.
Sincere. Why is that a good idea?
I'm not familiar with the details of this particular uranium deal, but we have trade in uranium with appropriate controls throughout the last 40 years, bipartisan.
40 years.
Both Republican and Democrat governments feel that we can keep the appropriate controls. And the bigger issue here is this whole issue is fake news in terms of an investigation.
Thank you.
It's been shut. In fact, all President Trump has to do is ask his current Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Head of the FBI, who looked at this and closed it in 2015. So this is fake news trying to divert from what is the issue.
I'm actually not engaging in fake. Okay, you may have that view, but I'm not engaging in that.
Yes, you are engaging in that. What the hell do you think we just listened to? I mean, 5 minutes before this, you're going, yes, the president is right. Why can't we get along with Russia? They didn't meddle in our elections. You know, let's all be friends. Let's be friends. Now, all of a sudden, they're our primary adversary in the world. And why did Obama think it was such a good idea to give our biggest rival on the planet? You know, He didn't give anything, okay? Shares traded hands. The uranium stays here. Hillary Clinton didn't do anything on this deal. Her deputy at the State Department sat on this board. 9 cabinet members recommended it's fine because it stays here. There's no, and he keeps saying yellow cake. This is very weird. So I wanted to know where he got this story about yellow cake. It's on Breitbart. And if you click on the link on Breitbart, what does it do? Does it give you a current story? No. It goes back to 2015. And there's no yellow cake either.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show. It's Friday, and that's payday, which doesn't happen without you. I've got a taste of the good life, and now I've got addictions that need to continue. A man's got to eat, and he can't eat without your support. So help Randi support me. Go to RandiRhodes.com/support, and everybody gets fed.
Hey, I need to tell you something about Herky Jerky because over the past year, you've been asking me to ask Jason from Herky Jerky if they will ever produce a turkey jerky. Well, I'm proud to tell you that he says absolutely yes. And not only does he have it now, it's absolutely spectacular. Let me start with the taste. It is extremely soft and slightly sweet, and it's bite-sized pieces that taste just like the homemade oven-roasted turkey that you have on Thanksgiving. It's made from turkeys raised without added hormones and just the right amount of salt, natural smoke flavoring, and spices that will make your taste buds go wild. And you asked for healthy. Well, Herky Jerky Turkey Jerky has no nitrates, preservatives, MSG, or artificial ingredients, absolutely zero fat, and packs a whopping 11 grams of protein per serving, and very low in cholesterol. Quite simply, I think this is one of the healthiest and best tasting high-protein snacks you can get. Herky Jerky is so excited to announce the new Turkey Jerky that they're offering $5 off all packs for the entire month of October. Just use promo code TURKEY when checking out. And as always, they don't sell the little dinky bags that you get at the gas station. They're 14-ounce zip-sealed packs, and they're meant to last. Herky Jerky, making quality jerky and meat snacks for almost 25 years. Gotta tell you, I believe this is as good as anything I've ever tasted and the best thing they've ever produced. Try some today, herkyjerky.com.
Hello, Progressive Voices tune-in listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week. What the heck is going on?
Could one even imagine, of all the places to make cuts, the CHIP program? They needed to reauthorize federal spending on the CHIP program no later than September 30th of this year. Well, guess what? They didn't. So the CHIP program, which is the Children's Health Insurance Program, there are funds now sitting in the states that carry them through the end of 2017. But that's it. When those funds are gone, they're gone. And unless Congress gets its act together and does a new reauthorization, that program will not have funding. So there's a lot of worry about whether or not this Congress can even pass something that is enormously popular. Take care of the children, for goodness sakes.
How many children does CHIPS insure?
CHIP covers millions of families, and some of what we're concerned about now is those millions of families who get coverage through CHIP for children, and also who get coverage, some who get coverage for the adults in the family through the expanded Medicaid programs, may also face some serious problems if Congress does not reauthorize funding for CHIP. So this is mind-boggling to think that millions of families would have to face worrying about whether or not kids who've been getting treatment for everything from asthma to diabetes, there are a lot of things that kids deal with now and health issues that if they are not treated properly, and nurses know this when they're kids, they are going to be lifelong health problems.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
very, very tight controls. They're reviewed by 9 agencies.
But you are factually wrong in this case because we don't know where the yellow cake is going. That's been reported by the New York Times. It's not something I'm making up in right-wing land. That's a real thing. So why aren't you upset about it?
Because I haven't seen that report, and from what I know, these have very tight controls on them. And if there's a problem, then the Trump administration needs to immediately look at it. What I'm concerned about is Congress doing Russia's bidding by trying to stop the investigation of Russia's collusion in our elections.
But this is why are we doing that? We have an independent council investigation that's proceeding at pace that has unlimited, but they can't stop it.
Why are the Republicans in Congress trying to do Russia's bidding and stop the investigation?
I'm a little surprised that you are resorting to political bumper stickers and talking points, and I'm asking you about a policy that affects our national security.
That's a real issue right now. No, you're trying to dig back in history to deflect from what's going on.
Digging back in history, it's ongoing. It's happening right now.
And what's happening right now
You're the former ambassador. Why am I the policy person in this conversation? I don't care what the Republicans do.
I said we need to address the security of this deal that was almost 10 years old, and we will. And the President of the United States has the power to do that. What I'm concerned about is what's happening today in Russia's interference in our elections.
This is happening today.
He's a moron. Okay, first of all, that article that he's talking about, that's a Breitbart article. And if you click on the New York Times story that they quote there, it takes you back to a 2015 article that talks about how the controls are being implemented. They're making this stuff up out of whole cloth. And what she's trying to say is you are disinforming your audience, making them think that there's nothing that can be done if you think that uranium is leaving the United States to go to Russia under this deal, that would be forbidden. And your president really could check and find out if what you're saying is your concern for real, that yellow cake uranium is being transferred over to Russia, then your president needs to do something about it right now, because it's never happened before. And there is no article to be familiar with because there is no article like that. Okay, it just isn't happening. But they are trying to defund, and this is what she was getting at, Robert Mueller's investigation. The Republican House, the Republican Senate, they are mulling over Mueller. They are trying to destroy the Mueller investigation by defunding it. And of course, you know that they've just taken $1 trillion out of Medicaid, and they took $470 billion out of Medicare in their ridiculous budget. And now they're using that to do tax cuts for the very wealthy, which is the vehicle that makes for white resentment, because if the middle class doesn't get anything out of this tax cut, or actually finds its taxes going up in certain states like Illinois, which is the heartland, you know, and New York and California, and the middle class gets, you know, more of a tax bill, then we're not going to have very much of a consumer-driven economy, which is 70% of our GDP. So listen, everything they're doing is trying to, you know, again, rip off people who work really hard all the time and give it to people who use money to make money. Capital gains taxes are less than the taxes you pay on actual work. Corporations do not pay 35%. That is the marginal tax rate. The effective tax rate, meaning what they actually pay, on average is about 18%, which is commensurate with the rest of the world. But there are some companies that pay zero, like GE, on billions of dollars in profits. And there are some companies that we actually end up refunding them. And one of the vehicles they use is CEO salaries. Now, they're trying, because CEO salaries are tax deductible for a corporation, they're trying to tell you that if you gave a giant corporation a tax break, that you would get $5,000 a year more in your pocket because they would pass it on to you, which is factually false, never has happened in ever, number one. Number two, the CEO would be fired if he did that. Why? Because his fiduciary responsibility is not to you, the laborer. It's to his shareholders, and they must get paid first. So any tax breaks that company gets goes to the shareholders. The CEO is one of those, so he's literally paying himself. And also, he would get a bonus for increasing the shareholders' value. He would never pass it on to the employees. He'd be fired if he did that. This is all such a stinking lie, but this uranium story, this just blows my mind. All right, so they're not letting it go. They're just not letting it go. Here is this white supremacist, Nazi sympathizer, Sebastian Gorka, and why he's still representing this White House is beyond me. And he's talking about how the Russians stole our uranium.
The Russians lied to impact the election. The Russians infiltrated our national security and to corner the uranium market, and they succeeded, and they knew all the crimes that were committed.
If this had happened in the 1950s, there would be people up on treason charges right now. The Rosenbergs, okay? This is equivalent to what the Rosenbergs did, and those people got the chair. Think about it. Giving away nuclear capability to our enemies, that's what we're talking about.
Is that what we're talking about? Because I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think what we're talking about is election hacking by the Russians and inserting themselves into our democratic process. The fact that we have a free press, that we have an open society, actually was used against us by the Russians to build white resentment in this country, to make Donald Trump's message resonate even more vividly, okay? To tell white people, black people, they're fighting for their rights, and in order for them to get their rights, they have to take them away from you, which is bullcrap, because the American dream is not a zero-sum game. But they wanted to, I mean, this is just unbelievable. Listen.
Everything that they tried to say about Donald Trump and his campaign, they are guilty of, but I'll add, on steroids and human growth hormone. That they sold out America's security in this case.
Oh, my God.
Give me the big picture takeaway from this, because now the media has gone silent on Russia, virtually silent.
What?
Here's the big picture takeaway, Sean. For more than a year, the fake news industrial complex and the Democrats and Hillary and Podesta and Ben Rhodes have been slinging filth against the president and against his team. None of it has stuck. But in the last week, we have had an explosion of scandals.
Okay, can I? Nobody has gone silent on Russia. In fact, the coverage on Russia is wall to wall now that we know that Cambridge Analytica actually reached out to WikiLeaks, who was the conduit for the Russian hacked emails, okay, for the Russian hacked DNC emails. I don't know what, they just make crap up. The media has gone silent. You know what, you Hungarian Nazi, go back to Hungary. Shut the F up. What are you talking about? This is unbelievable.
That all are true and that all go back to the DNC and to Hillary. And the trouble is, Sean, you have to do a massive service because you're the only people. It's you, it's Sarah, it's Solomon, it's Peter. But that's it. And there's so many scandals, we have to separate them. Number one, there's the Uranium One deal. That's treasonous.
Oh, for God's sake. That deal was reviewed by 9 cabinet members, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Assistant Deputy Secretary of State, on. And then it went to Barack Obama's desk. And the rule about our uranium is it cannot leave America. No matter who owns it, these were shares that changed hands. That company, that very same company, was owned by a South African company. Then it passed over. The shares were bought out by a Canadian mining company. The mine is in Wyoming. It's mined in Wyoming. It stays in the United States. Jeez, if you have a problem with it, talk to Dick Cheney. This is it's I don't want to use the word because it's insulting to people, but it's retarded. There's something so wrong with what they're doing here. Why are they misinforming and disinforming you, especially when the Russia story breaks that Cambridge Analytica, the Mercer family, the single largest donor to Donald Trump and to Breitbart, $10 million they gave to Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon was the vice president of Cambridge Analytica. Then all of a sudden they pluck him and put him on the Trump campaign, right? It's like Rebecca Mercer is she's inside the Trump White House. She's everywhere. Okay? This is crazy. And yet now we know that they were in touch with WikiLeaks. Now we know Roger Stone was lying when he said he wasn't in touch with WikiLeaks, even though he was tweeting that he was in touch with WikiLeaks. He was tweeting to Gustav 2.0, who is a Russian spy. Jesus. And now they want to go back 7 years? to a transfer of shares in a mining company? Oh, Jesus God. This Hungarian Nazi. Oh, my God.
Okay, we have to deal with that. Second, there's the dodgy dossier, which is about Russian disinformation being used to slander Donald Trump. And then...
Okay, the dossier. So what he's saying there is that Christopher Steele, an MI6 former British intelligence agent who was in charge of MI6's Russia desk, okay, Russia's field operation, Russia's spies, somehow flipped. He flipped. And he's working for Russia now and feeding disinformation to the United States. That's what he's saying there. That's crazy. That's absolutely bat crap crazy. Everyone in Trump's, you can't spit in the White House and not hit somebody who had a meeting with Russians. It's either Jeff Sessions meeting with Russians. It's Donald Trump meeting with Russians. It's Michael Cohen, his lawyer, trying to make a deal during the election campaign, during the whole thing, to build Trump Tower in Moscow. It's Trump going to Moscow. It's Trump having a Miss Universe pageant in Moscow. It's Jared Kushner and Jr. having meetings with Russian intelligence officers. It's Donald Trump 5 minutes after he fires Comey. Listen, literally 5 minutes, having Lavrov and Kislyak in the Oval Office saying, "Woo, I just fired that nut job Comey because of that Russia thing. Now that's off of my plate." Really? You have a president who obstructed justice. You have a president who has been communicating with Russia for years on end. But it's the MI6 officer, Michael Steele, who was in charge of the Russia intelligence operation for the UK. Suddenly, he's the snake? He's the piece of crap? You people really have to go a long way in order to just keep on loving on this Donald Trump lying sack of crap. And you don't believe me he lied? Listen through the break, okay? Because when we come out, I'm going to play a little bit of his opioid speech and show you how he lied to families whose children have died. Just flat out lied to them about what he's going to do about the opioid crisis. 25 minutes this man talked and said absolutely nothing.
Clear for takeoff. The Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randy's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randy's house. You know, eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randy was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please, go to RandiRhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
Yeah, you could buy tile at a chain store if you wanted to. You could wait for a kid to try and answer your questions about what's this made of, or how do I install it, or what's in stock. But what if you wanted serious craftsmanship? What if you wanted custom design, handmade, to order from your imagination, or an inspiration photo that you love? Probably you think you can't anymore, but I did. When it was time to shop tile, I came across a family-owned business that still handcrafts each and every individual tile, matching your colors, your inspiration, your design. Tempest Tile Works. They're based in Portland, Oregon, and they still handcraft the most magnificent tile. Let them match to your fabrics or to your countertops or to anything you can envision for your bath or kitchen. Teeny tiny tiles to oversized, their art or yours. It's all doable, it's all affordable, and it's all individually made just for your project. Visit Tempest Tile Works and look at their amazing gallery of designs and styles, and give up the chain stores. Tempest Tile Works, custom made. TempestTileWorks.com.
This is the voice of the resistance. You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network.
This is Ezra Levin, Executive Director of Indivisible. Please go to indivisibleguide.com, type in your zip code, find your local Indivisible group, and join the movement to resist Trump's agenda. We've teamed up with Progressive Voices Network to help your community take action and hold Congress accountable.
Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. President Barack Obama. We wrote this guide because we believe that the coming years will see an unprecedented movement of Americans rising up across the country to protect our values, our neighbors, and ourselves. Our goal is to provide a practical understanding of how your members of Congress think and how you can demonstrate to them the depth and power of the opposition to Donald Trump and the Republican congressional overreach. This is not a panacea, nor is it intended to stand alone. We strongly urge you to marry the strategy in this guide with a broader commitment to creating a more just society, building local power, and addressing systemic injustice and racism.
Take action and hold Congress accountable. This is Ezra Levin on the Progressive Voices Network, asking you to join the millions who decided to become part of the movement to resist Trump's agenda. Check out indivisibleguide.com to start resisting on your home turf. Keep listening for more ways you can get involved.
This is the voice of the resistance. You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
This epidemic is a national health emergency. Unlike many of us, we've seen and what we've seen in our lifetimes, nobody has seen anything like what's going on now. As Americans, we cannot allow this to continue. It is time to liberate our communities from this scourge of drug addiction. Never been this way. We can be the generation that ends the opioid epidemic. We can do it. We can do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is why, effective today, my administration is officially declaring the opioid crisis a national public health emergency under federal law, and why I am directing all executive agencies to use every appropriate emergency authority to fight the opioid crisis. This marks a critical step in confronting the extraordinary challenge that we face. As part of this emergency response, we will announce a new policy to overcome a restrictive 1970s era rule that prevents states from providing care at certain treatment facilities with more than 16 beds for those suffering from drug addiction.
Except Obama already did that in 2015. That's all I'm saying. Truth doesn't take a whole long time to tell you, okay? It just doesn't. It's a 1965 rule having to do with Medicaid. When Medicaid was first established, and it had to do with mental health care. But that said, in 2015, the waivers for states that asked for waivers for places with more than 16 beds for low-income residents, the federal government granted those waivers to California, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York. It was a waiver of an obscure Medicaid rule that prohibited the use of federal dollars for addiction treatment provided in facilities with more than 16 beds. He announces that he's going to do this. It was already done in 2015. Arizona, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Michigan, Utah, and Virginia all wanted permission to have this waiver. If they asked for the waiver, they got the waiver. This is just crazy. This man is just so full of crap. It's unbelievable. I mean, literally, this is done. So he declares it a national health emergency. Well, what does that mean? What kind of funding does that include? Answer, zero. $0. Here's his great idea.
One of the things our administration will be doing is a massive advertising campaign to get people, especially children, not to want to take drugs in the first place because they will see the devastation and the ruination it causes to people and people's lives.
He's going to do a big, beautiful ad campaign, everybody. It's going to be a big, beautiful ad campaign. Sounds a lot like Just Say No. However, that's his big idea. His big idea is he's going to market like kids who are growing up in households where their parents are addicted, don't know the horror of drug addiction, and yet the cycle continues. The cycle continues. Why? Because children aren't tended to by drug-addicted parents. They can't be because the addiction is the love of their life. The addiction is the reason for getting up in the morning. The addiction is what has them literally held prisoner. And they literally will sell their children because the addiction is so strong. And then the children are harmed. And then the children look to self-medicate. And on it goes. But
watch what happens if we do our jobs. How the number of drug users and the addicted will start to tumble downward over a period of years. It will be a beautiful thing to see. I learned myself. I had a brother, Fred, great guy, best looking guy, best personality, much better than mine. But he had a problem. He had a problem with alcohol. And he would tell me, don't drink. Don't drink. He was substantially older, and I listened to him, and I respected, but he would constantly tell me, don't drink. He'd also add, don't smoke. But he would say it over and over and over again. And to this day, I've never had a drink. And I have no longing for it. I have no interest in it. To this day, I've never had a cigarette. Don't worry, those are only two of my good things. I don't want to tell you about the bad things. There's plenty of bad things, too.
Yeah, like
but he
paying
really
hookers.
helped me. I had somebody that guided me, and he had a very, very, very tough life because of alcohol. Believe me, very, very tough life. He was a strong guy, but it was a tough thing that he was going through. But I learned because of Fred. I learned. And that's what I think is so important. This was an idea that I had where if we can teach young people not to take drugs, just not to take them. Because when I see friends of mine that are having difficulty with not having that drink at dinner, where it's literally almost impossible for them to stop, I say to myself, I can't even understand it. Why would that be difficult? But we understand why it is difficult.
Do you?
The fact is, if we can teach young people and people generally not to start, it's really, really easy not to take them. And I think that's going to end up being our most important thing. Really tough, really big, really great advertising.
He's a sick freak, okay? We need billions of dollars for not just detox, but for ongoing, cravings and school and being able to move people out of the environment where they are using drugs to a new environment where they have no connections, to people who are using drugs, where they're social. I mean, honest to God, every single person who listened to this speech yesterday who's in a position to understand addiction said America is hemorrhaging lives by the day because of this opioid epidemic. But President Trump offered the country a Band-Aid where we need a tourniquet. Instead of a commitment to emergency funding for our states and communities, President Trump offered empty words and half measures and an ad campaign. How many people, this is your brain on drugs. Honest to God, everybody remembers the egg in the fry. This is what he's proposing for an opioid epidemic. That and the stinking wall. because he doesn't understand where people are getting the freaking drugs. He has no earthly idea. First, I'm going to show you where the people get the drugs, okay? Here's a little experiment that they did on the TV so you could see, okay? A little experiment that they did on the TV. This is Jacob Soberoff. He's a reporter.
Buy fentanyl. Okay, here it is. Well, so the first thing that pops up at the top is buy 3M furin fentanyl online from Ching Labs.
The Chinese company's website clearly acknowledges the deadly effects of fentanyl.
Fentanyl has been growing in usage in the United States within the last decade. It's a highly potent opioid that's been linked to thousands of deaths. Overdose from fentanyl is problematic, especially when it's included as an adulterant in street heroin in order to increase potency.
Still, they offer to sell and ship it directly to the United States.
Okay, so my name, we've come up with a fake name, say Richard Stevens. I am interested in getting fentanyl sent to us in the United States. Submit.
And then, just a few minutes later,
whoa, the email already came through. Hello, we have a very potent fentanyl analog, very similar in potency to the original. We ship to USA. We only accept Bitcoin as payment method. Warm regards. Wow. Is it possible to get it to me without it being taken by U.S. Customs?
I'll check out the answer.
Here we go. They emailed back again. How long is that? 3 minutes. We provide a reship guarantee. Also, we ship using ingenious packaging. My name is Sarah. Nice meeting you, Mr. Richard. Smiley face. That is customer service. Wow. Would you be willing to send me a picture of the packaging? All right. 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, we got a response. Okay, check this out. This is the package that the fentanyl comes in.
Yep.
And this is the box that they ship it inside. Wait, I can zoom in, I think. Yeah.
a few days later, we again heard from China. It turns out, in addition to great packaging, Ching Labs also offers an insurance policy in case the drugs get caught by customs.
Just 4 days after we first started talking to our friend in China about ordering fentanyl directly to the United States, they gave us the pricing for a kilo. Mitch, can you guess what a kilo costs?
Well, we know in Dayton it's like $60,000 wholesale, right?
Right. $10,949 guaranteed. So if it gets seized at customs by the Americans, they're going to resend it for free.
That is where the fentanyl comes from. And fentanyl is the reason that people are dropping like flies. Fentanyl is, a pharmaceutical invention. Okay, our pharmaceutical companies, I remember, the people post-surgery, fentanyl patches, fentanyl pills. I mean, it's the most amazing. It's like 500 times stronger than heroin and morphine. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. All right, so here's what the president thinks is going to stop the drug epidemic.
For too long, dangerous criminal cartels have been allowed to infiltrate and spread throughout our nation. An astonishing 90% of the heroin in America comes from south of the border, where we will be building a wall which will greatly help in this problem.
All right, it's the Mexicans. Okay, so let's just check in with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who asked a customs agent, how effective is a wall? How?
How effective is a wall at preventing drugs from getting into the United States?
In terms of hard narcotics? No, I don't know that we get it immediately safer over hard narcotics. As of right now, the vast majority of hard narcotics come in through the ports of entry in deep concealment, or come in through the mail.
Or come in through the mail. Or come in through the mail.
What you're witnessing here are efforts in stopping drugs from coming through the U.S.-Mexican border.
Almost every car crossing is crossing for a legitimate reason. It's a very small percentage that comes in carrying contraband.
It's a very small percentage that comes in carrying contraband. Almost every car is crossing for legitimate reasons. So what's the problem? The mail. It's coming through the mail. And it's coming from China. Not Mexico. His wall isn't going to stop the customer service rep in China from guaranteeing you a kilo of fentanyl delivered to wherever you want in a plain brown box. By the way, though, I did a little experiment last night to see if you could track your package. Yeah, you can track your package. I mean, it takes 2 seconds to buy this stuff. And it isn't, I mean, there are analogs, meaning there are things that are very similar to fentanyl. There's like acetylfentanyl powder. This is just another website, yku.com. I went there. Yeah, yku.com. We are direct manufacturers and wholesale suppliers of chemical research products. Our delivery is 100% sure, and we deliver to your delivery address. We are ready to sell to you large quantities of our products ASAP worldwide. Contact us for fentanyl. Supplier, Hugh Zhang Lee Chemical Trading Company. Now, here's another one from YQ. Strict quality control, thoughtful customer service. Our experienced staff members are always available to discuss your requirements and ensure full customer satisfaction. And then I went and I looked at the reviews, like, you know, Amazon's always asking me to review the shirts that I like. And, you know, okay, the reviews say, great customer service, super friendly. I was able to track my package right to my door. Trump wants to build a wall. Between what? Me and the computer? A virtual wall somewhere? And he's going to China. And he was sitting on Lou Dobbs the other day. I didn't play because it's just, I can't. It just makes my head hurt to watch Lou Dobbs lie like that. Because I know him and it just, it hurt. But I mean, honest to God, he was sitting there saying that the president of China, he's Chairman Mao now. He just made himself the king of China. They rewrote their constitution to make him the emperor, the chairman for life, okay? President Xi, who he has this great relationship with. Honest to God, man, you really think Xi is going to do anything to stop us from being completely addicted?
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
This is the top of the hour from the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. Instead of commercials, you've got progressive news and interviews right here at the top of the hour.
Hello, Progressive Voices TuneIn listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
And that music can only mean one thing. It's time for Healthcare in America with senior correspondent Donna Smith. So welcome, Donna, and let's let the games begin.
Thank you. I'm ready.
Okay, so Donna, we want to get a sense of how debilitated our political system has become. Not that we all have a sense. But let's consider the uncertain fate of the Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIPS.
Yeah.
What is it? What does it do? And what the heck is going on?
Could one even imagine, of all the places to make cuts, the CHIP program? They needed to reauthorize federal spending on the CHIP program no later than September 30th of this year. Well, guess what? They didn't. So the CHIP program, which is the Children's Health Insurance Program, there are funds now sitting in the states that carry them through the end of 2017. But that's it. When those funds are gone, they're gone. And unless Congress gets its act together and does a new reauthorization, that program will not have funding. So there is a bill that was put forward on the House side. There is a bill that was put forward on the Senate side. The measures have not moved significantly forward now since the deadline passed. So there's a lot of worry about whether or not this Congress can even pass something that is enormously popular with people in this country. That, my goodness, take care of the children, for goodness sakes.
How many children does CHIPS insure?
CHIP covers millions of families in this country and keeps kids up to their families can make up to 300% of the federal poverty level, which is really an enormous benefit to many families. And some of what we're concerned about now is those millions of families who get coverage through CHIP for children, and also who get coverage, some who get coverage for the adults in the family through the expanded Medicaid programs, may also face some serious problems if Congress does not reauthorize funding for CHIP. So this is mind-boggling to think that millions of families would have to face worrying about whether or not kids who've been getting treatment for everything from asthma to, sadly, we have children, many more children than we've ever had before, have issues with diabetes. You know, there are a lot of things that kids deal with now and health issues that if they are not treated properly, and nurses know this when they're kids, they are going to be lifelong health problems for them. So this is just unconscionable in so many ways because of their political dysfunction that they can't get this done.
Yeah, and so now another very sad reminder that our health insurance system is broken. So a letter, "Dear baby Connor, your coverage is denied."
Oh, can you even believe it? I mean, this is, when you think about this child is a 9-month-old child who has a serious brain tumor. Well, there's no brain tumor that isn't serious, but this child has a serious brain cancer, a tumor that had been removed but then returned, and he had kind of reached the end of a traditional course of treatment, if there can ever be a traditional course for a child with a brain tumor, but he had been accepted, and Connor had been accepted into a program at St. Jude's Children's Hospital, to an experimental program, a clinical trial that had great promise to perhaps save his life. And lo and behold, a letter arrives not addressed to Connor's parents. This is a 9-month-old infant. The letter comes addressed to Connor explaining why they're denying this particular treatment to this child. Now, St. Jude's, as we all have heard for many, many years, is a very well-funded through donations and its foundation hospital, and they don't ever require families to out of pocket for their expenses. But even if that was part of what factored into the insurance company's decision-making, that, this won't keep the child from getting this care because St. Jude's will cover it, how unconscionable for them to make the decision that this 9-month-old infant will not have care because they see it as experimental and therefore not worth trying. 9 months old. Imagine if this were your baby and you're hearing from your insurance company, sorry, we've done the math and we just don't think the math adds up here.
It's outrageous.
It makes you wonder how in the world any of us are ever going to make a headway with this system.
Yeah, it can be really daunting for sure. You know, it looks like we do have some life in big numbers for the Healthy California Act, SB 562, California Single Payer for All bill. So what's happening with that?
Well, fabulous work by the nurses on this, and lots of activists and advocates putting enough pressure on enough individuals so that they will rise and tell their legislators in the California legislature that we want this to happen. It's never been more important than right now for Californians to really step up, help lead us as a nation, because the leadership's not going to come out of D.C. right at the moment.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
You've been listening to Top of the Hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. Commercial-free interviews and exclusive progressive news and information at the top of the hour.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Last year, we lost at least 64,000 Americans to overdoses. That's 175 lost American lives per day.
Oh, my God.
That's 7 lost lives per hour in our country. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of unintentional death in the United States by far. More people are dying from drug overdoses today than from gun homicides and motor vehicles combined. Think of it. Motor vehicle crashes, gun homicides, more people by far from drug overdoses. These overdoses are driven by a massive increase in addiction to prescription painkillers, heroin, and other opioids.
And so he's going to build a wall. I mean, this is crazy. You know why the spike in overdoses? It is because of this stuff called fentanyl. And there's a kind of fentanyl that is so deadly that if you touch it, it could kill you. I mean, this is what's happening. And where is this coming from? It's coming from China. It isn't coming from Mexico. Okay, there are. The amount of research is there for him to know. This man doesn't give a rat's ass. It's like he threw this whole thing together because he said last week that, he would, do something. Because everybody was asking him, didn't you say that you would declare a national emergency? Didn't you say that you would declare an American, a disaster? So he said, well, it's difficult. You got to go through, the government and got to figure out what that means. And he figured out that if we declared this a national disaster, and words matter here, if you declared it a national disaster, then states would be allowed to apply for funds, money through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. He didn't want people to get the money. So they sat there and thought about it and said, okay, well, what we could do? We could declare it a national health emergency. That requires no funding. Also, consider this little factoid. We don't have anymore a Health and Human Services Secretary. Tom Price is out for corruption. Right? He's out for corruption. Talk about the swampy people, okay? Even in his confirmation hearing, we knew he was an inside trader, and they still said, all right, go ahead. The president should have his cabinet picks. We'll give you him. And now he's gone already. Now he didn't even make it 9 months. He's gone. So we don't have an HHS secretary. Guess what else we don't have? We don't have a drug czar because Tom Marino, Representative Tom Marino, was supposed to be our drug czar. But guess what? Washington Post in 60 Minutes found out he was corrupt, that he had done a deal with Big Pharma, okay? And interviewed the DEA agents who said ever since Tom Marino passed his legislation and took away the tools the DEA needs in order to fight this fentanyl scourge and in order to, track down these huge amounts of pills that got, like one of the stories that this man said was one company, one of the distributors shipped 20 million doses of oxycodone and hydrocodone to pharmacies in West Virginia. That included 11 million doses to one county with only 25,000 people in it. And the DEA was able to track those, and then they changed the law. Tom Marino spearheaded it in the House, and then Orrin Hatch from Utah, he was the sponsor in the Senate, and he saw it through the markup process and the whole thing. And they passed this law, which, by the way, was rejected. I can't tell you how many times. Here's how it happened. This law that Tom Marino, he was going to be the drug czar. He was Trump's pick to be the drug czar. You're going to tell me that Trump cares about this opioid? You're going to tell me that China is going to do something? Listen, China, Chairman Mao is the guy who said religion back in the day was the opioid of the masses in the United States. So he was, while religion is frowned upon in, communist China and in communist Russia, they would say, oh yeah, let them feed on religion because it's the opiate of the masses. You could do anything to these people. They'll just pray about it. This is great. Now they know fentanyl is the opioid of the masses and they're perfectly willing to sell it to us. This is sick. That's why the spike in opioid deaths. But here's how Tom Marino got the thing, into law. This is what NPR reported. Quote, we've obtained internal memos, emails, and other documents from the DEA and from the Justice Department that show that the DEA and the Department of Justice for many, many years were opposed to changing this law. They had written memos, they had written emails saying this is going to upend our ability to go after these companies. Why are you doing this? And Congressman Tom Marino introduced this legislation anyway in 2014. The DEA got it killed. In 2015, he reintroduced it. The DEA got it killed. And then there was a change in leadership. Eric Holder left. He stepped down from being our attorney general. Loretta Lynch took over the AG's office, and we appointed a new DEA administrator who went to Congress and said, I think we need to work with these people. And there was an enormous amount of pressure placed on the DEA by Capitol Hill to pass this bill. And no one could figure out why the position changed. Why did the position change? Until the Washington Post and 60 Minutes did this report. And it turned out that the guys who were working at DEA for, government salaries were picked off by the pharmaceutical distributors, by the people who distribute Oxy and Hydrocodone and all these pills. And they were hired at exorbitant salaries to leave the DEA's legal office and go to work for Big Pharma, knowing where the holes in getting the bill passed was. And that's exactly what happened. There was a guy named Lyndon Barber. We played you this whole thing. I actually got in trouble for playing it. 60 Minutes flagged me and said, no, you're playing too much of the show, or, and I can't play it again. I can't play it again. But you should do yourself a favor and go watch 60 Minutes. From not last week, but the week before. So the bill was written by a pharmaceutical executive who used to work at DEA named Lyndon Barber. He was the DEA's own attorney. And Big Pharma went and picked off all the really good people that were working inside DEA who were fighting this and said, oh, just come, work for the other side. The revolving door. This is how swampy it's gotten. Well, right. And the whistleblower was a guy named Joe Ranazzisi. God love this guy. He worked at DEA for 30 years. And guess what Congress did? They investigated Joe Ranazzisi. His whole life was ruined. They found nothing. But they ruined his life. He lost his job at DEA. That is what Big Pharma does. So for this president to not acknowledge any of this and to say Tom Marino is going to be the drug czar, and of course Tom Marino's name, he withdrew his own name after this Washington Post 60 Minutes report came out. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And now the reason why death has spiked, not usage of heroin or any other. We have 22 million people in this country addicted to opioids. You realize that? 22 million people. We have 64,000 people died last year. You know what that is? 9/11, 3,000 people died. You do the math. You do them. It's like we have 9/11 every 3 weeks in this country. That's how the numbers play out. Every 3 weeks. And this president stands up and says, I'm going to do an ad campaign? Really? And my brother, he was the guy who told me not to drink, and it worked for me, so it'll work for you too. We were just outside. Scott looked at me and he said, I got this great idea. It's called DARE. It's going to be a program for children. It's genius. I thought of it myself. It's going to be fabulous. It's going to be, and you'll see, the children will stop doing the drug quickly. Well, believe me. I mean, it's unbelievable. This is crazy. This is absolute nuttiness. I looked at newspapers across the country last night and this morning. And I looked at Ohio. I looked at British Columbia. I looked at Syracuse. I looked at, where else did I look? Seattle. I looked at Alberta, Edmonton, Alberta. I looked at Calgary. I looked all over. New Hampshire, I looked at. West Virginia, I looked at their newspapers. This is what we have seen, an influx of fentanyl directly from China, said Carol Rendon, the acting U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Ohio and Cleveland. She said it's all coming in by carrier. It's coming in by mail. It's hugely concerning because fentanyl is so incredibly deadly. The China connection is allowing local drug dealers in North America to mass produce fentanyl in pill form, in some cases producing tablets that look identical to the abused version of OxyContin. It's also been added to Xanax pills. It's also been added to cocaine. This is what they say, Narcan. They said a shot of Narcan does not work if somebody has taken fentanyl or there's another form of fentanyl that's even more deadly. But they say it doesn't even work, the Narcan. They said one person was quoted as saying that a shot of Narcan is like a trickle of water when you really need a fire hose, because they've been giving people 12 injections of Narcan to save their lives after ingesting fentanyl. And pill presses are being shipped over here from China. We have tracked the import from China, Scavetta said, of fentanyl sold in the Canadian city of Calgary. The dealers ask for fentanyl powder. That's exactly what's being advertised on these websites that I put on my website today. And there are websites that guarantee delivery. If it's stopped at the border, they will send you a new one. He said the packages are labeled as different products like car parts. In Edmonton, Alberta, the police inspector said fentanyl and pill presses are coming from China. It's getting worse. We'll be battling this every day moving forward. In Southern California, U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency discovered a commercial pill press being sent from China to Gary Resnick in Long Beach, California. He set up a company called Beyond Your Dreams to order the machine. It was shipped through LAX. The Chinese company was called Capsulin International. According to the court records, they ordered 6 pill presses. One pill press can make thousands of pills an hour. These people had 6 pill presses operating out of a house in Long Beach, ordered from China. Only last year, China made it illegal to sell this stuff to us, and still they don't enforce it, because they would love to see Americans completely and totally addicted. If not dead, it's like their wet dream. Meanwhile, we have a president who is ceding power to the Chinese. Oh, I have this great relationship with President Xi. President Xi. Some say it's the best relationship we've ever had with China. Meanwhile, China is ripping us off every single day and poisoning us, and he's loving on this guy. The other ones, Russia is hacking into our election, into our voter databases, into voter registration databases, into the DNC, the RNC, and he loves them too. This man is so anti-American, I can't even tell you. And the idea that the 16-bed rule would be waived, Obama waived it. Obama waived it. Tom Price, before he left, actually said this: "We will continue the Obama administration's waiver policies for residential facilities with 16 beds or more." And that man stood there and made something up, said, "Oh, here's a genius idea. We're going to waive an old 70s era law on Medicaid for places that have more than 16 beds." Except it's already been waived. It was waived in 2015. Provided that these places include all addiction medications and outpatient therapy.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Hey, everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show. It's Friday, and that's payday, which doesn't happen without you. I've got a taste of the good life, and now I've got addictions that need to continue. A man's got to eat, and he can't eat without your support. So help Randi support me. Go to randirhodes.com/support, and everybody gets fed.
Hey, I need to tell you something about Herky Jerky, because over the past year, you've been asking me to ask Jason from Herky Jerky if they will ever produce a turkey jerky. Well, I'm proud to tell you that he says absolutely yes. And not only does he have it now, it's absolutely spectacular. Let me start with the taste. It is extremely soft and slightly sweet, and it's bite-sized pieces that taste just like the homemade oven-roasted turkey that you have on Thanksgiving. It's made from turkeys raised without added hormones and just the right amount of salt, natural smoke flavoring, and spices that will make your taste buds go wild. And you asked for healthy. Well, Herky Jerky Turkey Jerky has no nitrates, preservatives, MSG, or artificial ingredients, absolutely zero fat, and packs a whopping 11 grams of protein per serving, and very low in cholesterol. Quite simply, I think this is one of the healthiest and best tasting high protein snacks you can get. Herky Jerky is so excited to announce the new Turkey Jerky that they're offering $5 off all packs for the entire month of October. Just use promo code TURKEY when checking out. And as always, they don't sell the little dinky bags that you get at the gas station. They're 14-ounce zip-sealed packs, and they're meant to last. Herky Jerky, making quality jerky and meat snacks for almost 25 years. Gotta tell you, I believe this is as good as anything I've ever tasted and the best thing they've ever produced. Try some today, herkyjerky.com.
This is the voice of the resistance. You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network.
Dear fellow progressive, these are the times that try men's souls. It is not the first time our country has been in peril, and it won't be the last. It is, however, a unique threat from within, one the precise likes of which we have never seen before. It is our modern media mix that has enabled an incurious, unserious, pathological liar and textbook narcissist to accede to the highest office in the land. His is a world of make-believe, one that could only have been concocted by a student of reality TV. At least we know he studied something. The imagined slights, the trumped-up, pun intended, feuds, the insulting nicknames, the Twitter diarrhea, it is all of a piece. Entertaining, funny even in another context, but when you're busy blowing up the country's longest-running foreign relationships, devastating the environment, threatening trade wars, and embracing all the wrong actors, it's really hard to find the humor. At Progressive Voices, we take holding the powerful accountable as our most serious mission, and there is nothing more important to us today than making sure the PV audience is informed with unbiased information and that more and more people become part of our audience, and therefore are better informed than they can be by relying solely on the mainstream media, which, in so many ways, has shrunk from its duty as the watchdog of democracy. It is our sincere hope that you will help us in this important mission at this most critical hour. Go to progressivevoices.com and make your donation today. Please give whatever you can. Remember, we are a tax-exempt 501c3, meaning that your donations are fully tax-deductible. Thanks for supporting the Progressive Voices Network.
Hi, it's Randi Rhodes. Listen to me on the PV live stream or on demand or both on the PV app. Just go to progressivevoices.com or download the Progressive Voices app.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Finally, we must adopt the most common sense solution of all to prevent our citizens from becoming addicted to drugs in the first place. We must and are focusing so much of our effort on drug demand reduction. We must confront the culture of drug abuse head on to reduce demand for dangerous narcotics. Every person who buys illicit drugs here in America should know that they are risking their futures, their families, and even their lives.
I think they know.
Every American should know that if they purchase illegal drugs, they are helping to finance some of the most violent, cruel, and ruthless organizations anywhere in the world. Illegal drug use is not a victimless crime. There is nothing admirable, positive, or socially desirable about it. There is nothing desirable about drugs. They're bad.
Oh, well, that does it. So, everybody quit. They're bad. They're bad. It's sad. Bad, sad. Exclamation point. Oh, my God. This is unbelievable. And then he talked about drug courts being the solution, okay? Drug courts. I swear to God. I swear.
Here in America, we are once again enforcing the law.
Oh, my God.
Breaking up gangs and distribution networks. It
isn't gangs.
And arresting criminals who peddle dangerous drugs to our youth. In addition, we understand the need to confront reality right smack in the face that millions of our fellow citizens are already addicted. That's the reality. We want them to get help they need. We have no choice but to help these people that are hooked and are suffering so they can recover and rebuild their lives with their families. We're committed to pursuing innovative approaches that have been proven to work, like drug courts. Our efforts will be based on sound metrics and guided by evidence and guided by results. This includes making addiction treatment available to those in prison and to help them eventually re-enter society as productive and law-abiding citizens.
I hate to tell him, but there's already AA and NA and all that is in prison. I don't know. Why is he always talking about, you know, the lowest common, it's drug cartels and it's this and I need a wall and it'll keep it. This is happening because of email. I swear to God, this is unbelievable. And his solution, we're going to, you know, waive the 16 bed provision. Was originally intended, I think some of the people who are older in the audience will remember this, that there was a Medicaid, there was a problem with Medicaid, and that Medicaid was paying these giant institutions that were operating for mentally disabled people, which we've now decided to call mentally disabled people. But, you know, back then, I mean, they would put alcoholics in a mental institution, and that's what we called them. They would put disabled children in a mental institution, and that's what they called them. And so Medicaid got hip to this and said, you know what? You're not warehousing our children, and you're not going to warehouse our mentally disabled. And the way that this is getting done is federal money through Medicaid, because people who are, unable to participate in their own lives because of mental disorders or because of alcoholism or because of drug addiction, opioid addiction, which is as old as the Chinese opium dens here in the United States, okay? They didn't want these people warehoused. Do you remember when Geraldo Rivera was Geraldo Rivera before he became this thing that he is now? One of the biggest story he ever broke was a story about one of these institutions called Willowbrook that was warehousing children, you know, in these giant group settings. So now, if you know anything about rehab, it's very residential. So you have it like a sort of apartment-like setting, or you have a dormitory-like setting, and it's one person in a room, or it's two sharing a two-bedroom apartment-like setting, etc. And of course, don't forget the ACA made it possible for people to pay for rehab. And in 2015, Obama did waive the 16-bed rule, saying that you could have a place with more than 16 beds. And the reason why we didn't is because more than 16 beds tended to become warehouse-like. And so that's why the rule. So he said we'll waive the rule if you want to do drug treatment, but as a requirement for the waiver in a residential treatment setting, you must also offer all available addiction medications for the detox and for the maintenance. You have to offer intensive outpatient therapy. You have to offer recovery support services such as job training and housing. You have to provide substance abuse prevention programs, case management, physical health services, checkups, urine tests, the whole thing, right? You have to do all this. That was done in 2015. This lying sack of crap said that, he's going to waive the rule, but the rule's already been waived. So now I'm wondering if he's waiving the requirement in the waiver that in order to get the waiver, you have to provide all these other additional services. I don't know, because he's a liar. He's just a liar. But all this is happening. The amount of deaths that we have now is because of fentanyl delivered through the mail. One of the guys in Dayton, Ohio, I told you I looked all over the country. I got, newspaper articles from everywhere, including Canada, New Hampshire, West Virginia, Ohio, Seattle, Southern California, San Diego area, Long Beach. Okay, I just read everything I could. And this was my favorite quote of all. This is from the Dayton area. Ken Betts of the Montgomery County Coroner's Office talked about a spike in fentanyl deaths and said, if you shut down all the mail service in America for one day, mail, not the wall. If you shut down all the mail service in America for one day, you'd shut down more than half of the drug trafficking in America. And he's talking about an ad campaign? He's talking about drug courts? Really? He's talking about don't start. Just don't ever touch it. My brother taught me that. It'll work for you because it worked for me. It's genius. I thought of this. Let me tell you something. Republicans love the fact that white people are drug addicted. It's the best voter suppression they've ever seen. It's the best way to get people not to participate in their own lives, is to be drug addicted. And addiction takes over your whole life. I mean, everything about your life. Everything about it. From your children, to your husband, to your wife, to your job, no nothing. That's why Medicaid is so important that's why the ACA expansion, and in the 31 states that did expand Medicaid, there's drug addiction treatment. You understand that, right? 31 states and Washington, D.C., the option of Medicaid expansion was adopted. And in those 31 states, you have these low-income, non-elderly, because the elderly are covered under Medicare. But you have the people that were not elderly. And by the way, this addiction crosses every boundary you could possibly imagine. Just think of one that you think separates you from that. No, you're part of a group that is affected by it. No matter what you identify yourself as, rich, poor, professional, attorney, doctor, lawyer. I don't care what your station, auto mechanic, white, black, Latino, Asian, ever. It doesn't matter. Okay, we're all Americans when it comes to addiction, and 22 million of us are addicted. It's just unbelievable. But there is treatment available under the Medicaid expansion, and that's why he did the waiver in 2015. But there also is the ACA covers rehab. Now, this article that I have in front of me is from 2015. California, you were the first state to receive a federal Medicaid waiver. You got it in 2015. 2 years later, California's counties, because they all have their separate Medicaid programs, they're still wrestling with it. They're still trying to iron out the details. Maryland, you were approved in July 1st, 2015. Massachusetts, you went in 2015. I mean, this is crazy. And then the other people, who have, their health insurance policies now cover rehab. I mean, this man offered nothing. 25 minutes of yakking yesterday. Said absolutely nothing. And requested zero funds. Requested $0. Didn't even ask for an appropriation. Didn't even ask. He wants to put $1 billion in advertising. This is what he wants to do. A big, beautiful ad campaign. Linwood in Charlottesville.
Hi, Randy. This is a great topic you're talking about, but it also goes into the broader picture of racism, white supremacy. When I read that article in NPR, about 55% of European Americans think that they've been discriminated against, I didn't laugh at it, nor did I think it was humorous. I saw it as a much bigger problem. And the problem is that European Americans have been given by their elites, the tiny minority of their population, a reason to look at their lives in peril, whether it's drugs, whether it's unemployment, whether it's downtroddenness, whether it's white privilege. And the check of white privilege is now starting to bounce. And it's not working for them anymore, so they need something to blame. This man is the epitome of what Ronald Reagan is, what David Duke is. These are pimps. They pimp white folks for a couple dollars, and white people don't mind getting on the stroll, selling their ass for a few bucks and getting nothing in return.
Yes, I mean, it's racial politics. There's no question about it. And it's been played on people in this country for, about 30, 40 years. And, when you look at the period of time where we stopped growing, you look at the period of time when, working people had their last big, raise, or when wages were actually going up and the minimum wage was being lifted constantly or whatever. And that ended as soon as they started to, play this race card where they said, oh, no, it's not us that need to raise your minimum wage, or it's not us that need to, redistribute the wealth back to you. It's the black guy. And the American dream is a zero-sum game. So if African Americans are winning, that means you're losing.
And see, there was some interviews done with that on that article, and when I read the person who was interviewing, I said to myself, this is about white privilege and things that the masses of European American people are getting, but they're not getting it. they're feeling that they're attacked. And the gentleman is right about every white person getting pegged. He's right. European Americans are getting pegged as racist, as X, as Y, as Z, because who's in control?
Well, you know, the thing is, we shouldn't call all white people racist who don't realize they have white privilege. You know, who don't realize that when they go to a store, they're not going to be followed around, but you will. Who don't realize that when they drive their Jaguar, they drive their Mercedes or their BMW, they're not going to get pulled over, where if you were sitting behind that wheel, you would. Okay, so those people that don't realize that that is the case, we shouldn't call them racists, but we should point out why there is such a thing as white privilege.
Well, white privilege is like that check I mentioned earlier. It's like when you go to work and you work for somebody and somebody writes you a check for your day's labor. You go to the bank and you need that check cashed. Well, the funds are not in there, but you still get the money. So what's happened in this country is the founders of this country were all slave owners.
Okay, this is not a good example. Okay.
Well, hold on. Wait a minute. Let me explain it. The people who were on top of it, who had all the power, all the control, the massive European American people, ma'am, don't have it. Their tiny elites do. And so what they kept getting was these bad checks, and they were going to the bank and cash it. That check is white privilege. And so now what's happened is the masses of white people are now being pointed the finger, saying you're responsible for 400 years of African oppression, thousands of years of colonialism.
I don't get it.
Now you're responsible.
Do you get it? Well, no, we don't get it. None of us get what you're saying. None of us.
What I'm saying is the masses of white people.
You don't need to go there. This is ridiculous. This analogy. You're really muddying the waters, and I'm on your side, and your argument sucks. It's so bad. Yeah, it's bad. But usually you are bad, Linwood. I know your heart's in the right place, but you can never explain yourself out of a paper bag. And you really shouldn't try and delve into these really sensitive topics because they're sensitive. All you need to say is we have a president who praises good Nazis. Then everybody gets it. You have Sebastian Gorka, who's a white nationalist. You have Jason Miller, who's a white nationalist. This is a white nationalist presidency. That's all you have to say, and some people might wake up and realize that that is so. This thing about checking and cashing a check and slavery, no. The powered elite in this country, all the power in this country, is in the hands of white people, predominantly male people. Therein lies your dilemma.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randi's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randi's house. You know, eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randi was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please go to RandiRhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
Yeah, you could buy tile at a chain store if you wanted to. You could wait for a kid to try and answer your questions about what's this made of, or how do I install it, or what's in stock. But what if you wanted serious craftsmanship? What if you wanted custom design, handmade, to order from your imagination, or an inspiration photo that you love? Probably you think you can't anymore, but I did. When it was time to shop tile, I came across a family-owned business that still handcrafts each and every individual tile, matching your colors, your inspiration, your design. Tempest Tile Works. They're based in Portland, Oregon, and they still handcraft the most magnificent tile. Let them match to your fabrics or to your countertops or to anything you can envision for your bath or kitchen. Teeny tiny tiles to oversized, their art or yours. It's all doable, it's all affordable, and it's all individually made just for your project. Visit Tempest Tile Works and look at their amazing gallery of designs and styles and give up the chain stores. Tempest Tile Works, custom made. TempestTileWorks.com.
I remember as a kid, the stereotypical things associated with girls were cooking, cleaning, fashion, interior design, anything to do with children, hair, makeup. But as an adult, I realize that the top earners in all of these professions are men. How did this happen? Well, it's one of the conversations we're going to have on my new show called She Persisted. I'm your host, Melissa Carter, and as a media personality, a lesbian, a single mom, and a patient with a chronic disease, I can tell you, I certainly have some opinions. And I know that you do too. So let's be part of each other's lives and talk these things out on She Persisted. It's at 8 a.m. on the East on the Progressive Voices Network and on demand on the Progressive Voices app. I would really love for you to be part of the show because I believe that together we can go from She Persisted to She Thrived. I hope you'll join me.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
So, I guess the 30,000-foot question is, can you be surprised that when you change a society as old as a European society, or even one as old as ours, completely through immigration in a short period of time, that some people won't like it and that there will be a backlash against it? Does that surprise you?
I'm not surprised at all, Tucker, and I don't believe in absolute open borders, and I absolutely understand why people are unsettled, why they're resentful, and why they're upset. I've reported in Germany and France and Holland and Denmark, people are angry about how their neighborhoods are changing, and they have legitimate grievances and legitimate fears, and often parties on the center left and on the left haven't listened to them for years. So I get why people are resentful. What I'm concerned about and what worries me is that we have a new group of politicians in far-right populist parties that are exploiting those fears and those grievances and those resentments to take our societies back 100 years and in a very dangerous direction. And when I say that white nationalism is a greater threat than jihadists, I'm acknowledging that terrorism is a huge threat to our societies, but great democracies persevere and they manage. Look at the UK, look at France after the attacks, look at us after 9/11. But if insiders within our societies, nativist politicians, start to stir hatred and resentment towards immigrant groups and refugee groups, we know where that has taken us in the past, Tucker, and it's dangerous and it's divisive. And I think that we need leaders and a news channel that will come out and unequivocally, swiftly, and forcefully condemn those ideas whenever they emerge.
Yeah, I think your point is hysterical and silly.
I think you're a moron, Tucker. Tucker Carlson obviously is of Irish heritage. When the Irish immigrants came here, the Italians hated them. And then when the Russian immigrants came here, the Italians and the Irish hated us. And we're as white as we get. We're pasty white, okay? And the Chinese before them, that's America. America's a nation of immigrants. That's what America is. I mean, and Fox News and this nationalist, agenda of Trump and Gorka and Jason Miller and Steve Bannon and the whole Breitbart crew and Fox News and everybody that piles onto it. These people are loyal to some other country because it ain't American to be anti-immigrant. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Go do a 23andMe. Figure out where the hell you're from. Gorka, especially. I think he's got a little Arab in him. I'm just saying. Just look at him. But this is craziness. This is absolute. And all this is playing into the resentment that 50-year-old men have because Republicans believed in free trade so hard, so much, that they lost their freaking jobs. Now, here's a little piece of information for all you resentful white people. Trade in and of itself and the tax code are not what's pushing your job overseas. What's pushing your job overseas is these American companies are searching the planet for the cheapest labor. The cheapest labor. You want to see 16 beds, you know, and warehousing of humans? Look at the Chinese factories. They have to put nets outside the windows so that when these people are so overworked and haven't seen their families in weeks or months, they try to kill themselves and jump out the windows. The nets will catch them. And they'll be returned to the shop floor. Smarten up already. This is crazy. And yes, they're exploiting this undereducated group of people who can't figure out what's happening. And it's all happening because all the power is in the hands of fewer and fewer and fewer. The amount of wealth that the top 1% owns is greater than the bottom 90% combined. That is the Gilded Age. Here's the good news. The last time we had a Gilded Age, you should look this up too. The last time we had a Gilded Age, it led to the Progressive Era, where people finally understood that the small amount of people, the Carnegies, the Mellons, who are still around, by the way, these family fortunes, they amass so much money by using immigrant labor and not paying them, or paying them in company chit, they called it. Right? They amass so that to this day they have this wealth, okay? It's all happening all over again, and we need a new progressive era, just like we had last time, where you raised, Woodrow Wilson, this is why they hate him so much. He actually invented the income tax to level the playing field, to spread the wealth around. Yes, redistribute the wealth from a handful of people who were well connected and got every single route for every single railroad before the one little bit of track was laid, okay? This is ridiculous. It's all happened all over again. And you people, Republicans, keep voting for the same thing over and over again. Lower the taxes on the corporations. Deregulate the marketplace. Concentrate the wealth in fewer and fewer hands. And oh, by the way, do it all in a time of war. Then when the economy, the market crashes, and it will crash. When the market crashes, when the entire experiment goes, guess who pays for it? You do. You do. And after 2008, some people have never recovered, and they don't understand why. And that's why they were mad at Obama, even though Obama inherited a hemorrhaging economy. 800,000 jobs a month, every month we were losing when Obama came into office for at least a year. Okay, at least a year. People were going bankrupt, losing their houses. And Obama was able to turn it around. You just don't think growth is fast enough. And now this charlatan's got you believing that if you give the rich even more, somehow it's all going to work out again. It never works out. Never. This is crazy. You keep voting for the same damn thing. And why? Because they play into your resentment. They cause it, and then they point at somebody else and blame them. That's why I always call Donald Trump the Blame Americans First president, because that is what he does. He blames Americans. It's a ridiculous, ridiculous presidency. Republicans, their entire platform is a ridiculous platform. It never works for you. It never works for any middle-class person. It doesn't work for an upper-middle-class person. It doesn't work for somebody making $80,000 in New York City. So how is it going to work for a guy making $35,000 in West Virginia? It isn't. It can't. Todd in Indianapolis.
Hi, Randy. This is Todd.
Hi, Todd.
I was just thinking about these Republican enablers and how, you would actually call people out for doing things as a factor of mental illness, not only to stop it, but to help them. If you saw somebody lying constantly, a chronic liar such as Donald Trump, you would have to do something. And those people that don't, they're making a huge mistake. I mean, you can only compare it to another mental illness, such as like chronic masturbation. If you saw someone publicly masturbating 4 or 5 times a day, you'd stop them. You'd say, no, this can't be tolerated. And I don't understand where the mental illness is not being stopped by Americans that claim to have American interests at heart. And I don't know what you think of that, but I think.
Well, I think that there is something to be said as far as greed being a mental disorder. It's a disordered mind that thinks that their worth is gold. Their worth is stuff. Their worth is ripping off people or selling fentanyl to people to enrich yourself. I mean that's a mental illness. The gluttony, you can never get enough. The whole thing. It's a sickness. I don't know, where in the manual it falls, but you have a president who is pathological, can't tell the truth, exploits, the very most sensitive things that are going on in American life, exploited yesterday people's addiction to, opioids that are so powerful that you can't even touch them or you'll die. People handle these things with gloves on when they bust these, and it's never enough for them. It's never enough. And they want more and more and more in fewer and fewer hands because that's the least amount of people they have to deal with, the happier they are. So let's just concentrate it into the hands of maybe 1,000 people, and then we could all meet, in the woods somewhere and divvy it all up. I mean, this is what's happening. And then they exploit all the resentment because people can't figure out how this all works. They just can't figure it out. So they either paint with a very broad brush and say, all government is bad. No, the part of government that would keep banks from cheating you is not bad. The part of government that would hear the cases that you bring when you're cheated is not bad. The part of government that would police the postal system and x-ray these boxes and packages that are obviously coming from China, that wouldn't be bad. But the kind of vehicle that they use is the tax code to redistribute the wealth from your pocket to their, let's say, 1,000 people, which they find much more manageable. And you can stay drug-addled until you die because you won't put up a fight. You can't. They love addiction. Opioids are the opioids of the masses. Pat in Alabama.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
I just want to thank you. You have kept us alive in the state of Alabama, the progressive.
Oh, thank you.
I know you've lived down this way, so you know what I'm talking about.
I lived in Mobile, so it's a really, really great place. But, I've traveled to, Satsuma. Not so great.
Yeah, it's bad. The whole state is controlled by Republicans.
I know. It always was.
But what I don't want to waste any time. I didn't know they were going to put me on the air. What I wanted to bring up was
Why?
getting back to the first part of your show. When I found out, I think I was watching a news show on television at night because that's all we watch at night, and they said that Bill Browder had been classified as being on the most wanted list.
Interpol.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew right then that something was about to hit the fan. And I'm wondering how you think all this is playing into this topsy-turvy.
Well, this is like the same exact situation where this DEA agent, resident, I always mess his name up, God forgive me. Okay, but
exactly.
Okay, so what do? They blame the messenger, right? They blame the messenger who exposes, the corruption of a Tom Marino who is slated to be our drug czar, and they prosecute or they attempt to prosecute I can never say his name, but Joe.
Me either.
Okay, from the DEA. So now they're doing it with Bill Browder. Bill Browder is now on Interpol's most wanted list because Russia put him there, and the United States refuses to take his name off.
I know, and I can't understand how that happened. Is it because we're
It's because
supposed
this
to be
president,
allies with them in the UN, or what?
No.
Or is this a Trump deal?
It's a Trump deal, and Trump does whatever Russia wants him to do.
Oh, man. Well, I've been watching Periscope, all the news shows. I keep up with the Fox people and the other side of the weirdo petition. just to stay alert to what they are doing.
Good.
And I want you to know that it's not just coming from Breitbart. It's coming from all of them. From Fox, it's coming from some guy that's been on the web. I think his first name is Bill, and he is now on Periscope. He was talking about this today. All of them have consolidated their message, and they're just spewing
They always
it out.
have. Okay,
right.
Every single day there's talking points. Okay, I don't get them. I never did. But the Breitbarts, the Bannons of the world, the media moguls, the Mercers, the Koch brothers, they all tell them what to think, what to say, when to say it, where to say it, and they just go on each other's shows or they send out talking points. It's just a gimme. That's done. That's the way it is. The problem is that the GOP, as we knew it when we were growing up, the Ronald Reagan part of the GOP is surrendering. They're surrendering to Steve Bannon because they don't think they can fight him.
Absolutely.
And that's because he's got
said,
and that's because of the amounts of money we're talking about. I mean, the Mercers are multi-billionaires. They invested in Breitbart $10 million. They have the analytics. They have the know-how on the computer, right, to disseminate these messages now. And so it's ending up in people's Facebook feeds, and bots are retweeting their talking point. It's worse than it ever was in the 90s when I first encountered it. Okay, and now you got the Koch brothers, who also are going to spend $300 to $500 million in 2018. That's just two families. That's just two families. Now, why would they spend this kind of money? Because each family, if the tax plan goes through, will save about $30 to $50 billion. So a $300 to $500 million investment to get back $30 to $50 billion is a good business deal for them. And America has become a business deal. America has become a corporation. America has become something that very wealthy people invest in this way. They buy our legislature, they buy our Congress members, they buy our senators, and they bought themselves a crazy president. And that's what we found out this week. The Mercers literally were talking to WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks is a Russian cutout. Hacked, illegally gotten gains, disseminated through WikiLeaks, repeated by this president. It's crazy what happened. And they're still doing it. And the president wants us to get along with the country that's waging war, countries that are waging war on us. And those countries are China and Russia. And he can't get close enough to them fast enough. That's your problem. You think you voted for an America first? No, you voted for a blame Americans first president. Have a good weekend. Bye, Stinking Podcast. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a Stinking Podcast.